Go.
Good night, everyone. Welcome to the YouTube Model Builders Tuesday night show, the 5 scale live build. Last week we got started, or last month we got started on the BTS kit, and this month we'll finish it up. So I've got Miles Hale and Barry Rosier, of course, and always Johnny with us for YouTube Model Builders Tuesday night show. We'll get started now.
Me with my pants down. Oh man, Andy just cut me short here. Normally he's going and going. Hey, welcome to YouTube Model Builders 5 scale live show. I want to say go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. There you can check the schedules for all the shows. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday show. Thursday doesn't have a schedule. Tuesday and Wednesday shows are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern time. So be sure and check your time zones for that. Thursday and the Saturday live shows are still at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern time. And while you're at the website, YouTubeModelBuilders.com, be sure and click on the eMag icon there and sign up for the e-magazine. We just had one come out, maybe not quite 2 weeks ago. JD and his team have done a fantastic job again. A lot of labor put into it by JD and his team. Got a lot of contributing editors to it too, so be sure and check that out. It is PDF, so you can download it and put it on a wide variety of devices so you can carry it with you. And I guess with that said, we'll turn it back over to Andy. It's all yours.
Back to our traveling correspondent. That's right. I told you we had to go faster. We have got to keep up with Miles. He builds like he's been doing this a really long time. So I work at a much slower pace. And part of the joy, I think, in wood structures is coming and work in short spurts because there's a lot of waiting time. And I don't really build a lot at one time. But boy, he does it like he's getting paid for it. We have to keep up. So we have to move a little faster. And that's a good idea because we got the basics covered last month anyway. We all built the structure, got to a square box. We probably shouldn't have to cover that again unless there's something unique or unique material as we go with forward structure. So we'll get right into the nitty gritty then. So this time we've got to finish this structure up, and each of us show some different techniques. I know all of us have talked about the ways we do this, and we just there's not a right way, there's not a wrong way. We all chose different ways coincidentally because we prefer it, and Miles chose the fast way. So and it's exceptional. You know, the thing that hurts my feelings sometimes is I could spend days, literally days and days or weeks working on some particular part of a project, and Miles will have a 15-minute video that he slowed down to talk to us on, and it looks as good as any product result I get. So there's not a right or wrong way. There's just a few. So this month we want to cover windows and roofing to bring this structure to a close. Maybe some of the details about planting your structure on layout, getting a finished structure, where it needs to go on a diorama layout briefly, so that as we go forward with future shows and we cover more complicated builds, we won't talk as much possibly about the planting in the layout. So the physical part of putting a frame around it, things like that. So Miles, you want to talk about roofing style that you chose to put on yours?
Yeah, I can do that. I was putting some lights in here, but this is my roof. And by the way, for those of you from the South, I know that Johnny and many of us from the South, the better part of the United States, will understand me as I talk that this is a roof. Some of you would say roof, but that is an incorrect pronunciation if you want to be accepted. It is a roof. And what I did was I took black tar paper, and let's go to this camera. You can see it a whole lot better. I took black tar paper. This was provided in the kit, in the O-scale kit. And I did a little bit of a modification of a technique that a friend of mine here in Kansas City, Larry Deal, he's a retired architect, a little bit different technique of the way that he did it. And let's see if I can pull down some crayons here real quick from up above. Show you what I did there. Because I took I had some pencils. He uses the chalk that you buy at the art store. If I can get one out of here. There's white. Let's see if I can't find a different one up here. That one doesn't work. Get a different one than that. Sorry, I should have been better prepared on this part. Where have I got my chalks? Pastels, there we go. These are from Alpha Color, but there are many different ones. What you don't want is one of the chalks that's an actual pastel. The pastels have oil in them, and these are just pure chalks. So all I did on this was I got a piece of cardboard, which I had sitting around here. I'll show you what it looked like. I taped down my pieces of black paper. Do the back side of this one here so you can see. I took a gray. I am still in frame. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Took this and I just scraped this on at random with my knife. Just knock it all over the place. And I did that with about 4 different colors, including I did a little bit of green, and I'll try and get a close-up here in a minute. This is white. This is off a chalk pencil, like that. And then you take a brush. I always say that model railroading is so fantastic because you can go to all kinds of different stores and buy things that you never would buy otherwise. It gives you an excuse to have all kinds of different tools. This is a Japanese painting brush. But then you can see here, I think, as I streak this, that it actually gives it a weathering as if the water had been running down this roof. And then cutting it into, in this case, since I'm an O-scaler, I cut into 3/4 inch strips, which is 3 feet. I would cut them in HO at approximately 3/8 or something very close to HO 3 feet. And then I cut some gaps here. I didn't make them always continuous because roofing runs out, so they have to start a new roll. So there's several joints in here. I cut one strip in half and used that for my cap strip when I got to the top. And what I did use to hold mine down was the trusty, and I talked about this I think last time, this is the double stick tape from 3M, very high bond. It's kind of pricey, but man, does it work. And this roof will be down forever. It's almost like an instant contact adhesive tape. So throw that out of the way. And that's basically what I did for mine. I did put a fixative on here to kind of hold things. And then after I was all done, and let me go around to my other camera here, and I want to show you a close-up because it's the only way I can get really tight on this thing. Go over here to that's the HO Hero, but I'll try and throw this guy in. I think you can see that streaking that comes down. That was actually a piece of 100 grit sandpaper that I rubbed vertically from the top down and gave it, turn it over here so you can see the other side too, gave it that streaking that you see kind of in that paper. But it just added a little bit more, and it made it a little bit more varied, made it a little bit more looking like it had been weathered by Mother Nature. So that's my part for roofing.
Boy, that's a really good look, and what a quick way to get the color out of it. I love working with the powders. There's a lot of people argue that oils have their place, but I do really like the powder.
I think the powders.
Look at what you've been working with.
Well, what I decided here was I was at a show a few weeks ago, and I decided I want to do some metal roofing. So I picked up this Builders and Scale rib seam roofing. And it's HO scale. It's 10-foot wide sheets of the standing seam. So this is what it looks like, loose here. So what I want to do is show you how this is just perfect to fit in our roof with a little cap strip. So what I want to do here, so I did on here, rather than applying actual hard paper that came with the roof, I just went and glued my bracing in and then did a quick cover of this with a black Sharpie marker just to look like around the edges that there's actual felt roofing under this. So what I want to do is take my sanding block here, and I'm just going to rough some of this up give it a little texture. Get down in the seams a little bit. Now, get my trusty dusty weathering brush I use here. And I like this better than other types of powders because, you know, it actually has a stickiness to it. So there's actually a micro adhesive in there. If I get this tape off of here, exacto time. Yeah, tape these shut so they don't spill everywhere. Now I gotta forget I did it. Okay. There we go. So what I want to do here is just take, this is as a weathered brown, and this is going to start, you know, hitting the roof with it. Tone it down some, get that bright shine off it. That's one thing with Bragdon powders, man. Any kind of powder, big mess, but they work very effectively
and easy to recapture. I get those roll-up cutting mats from. I've got a couple of those roll-up cutting mats from Walmart for $2 or $3 a piece, and you can roll it up and drop it back into the AIM or AIM.
Yeah. The one thing you got to remember: take your excess, get it off to the edge. Because otherwise it gets all blended into one big color, and then everything will look like a big muted color. So now what do I want to do? Do a little, get my X-Acto here. Yeah, I learned the hard way to tape these things shut. Almost lost the whole container of this stuff. And that's one thing. I'll probably wish to need more of this stuff. So,
are you using the Bragdon or the AIM powders?
Bragdon.
Yeah, they're both very good. They're somewhat similar, but I like the Bragdons.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the one nice thing with the Bragdons is they have a little bit of an adhesive in them, which isn't really working so well. I thought it would have stuck better to this stuff. So. It probably would be better if I actually hit this with a dull coat.
That's what I did provide.
I have handy here. So obviously this would be my technique for weathering it. Just use the powders, but I should have dull coated this roofing first because it's not sticking very well. So, we discussed about whether we'd have, you know, a little failure in some of our projects here. So here's mine, folks. Take my brush. I have a couple legs in my bench, and I just go like this and get the brush clean. And then you can take and rinse it off in a little alcohol. I keep a couple containers over here of water and alcohol in. So obviously my plan didn't work too good here. So my advice would be, like I said, hit this with dull coat because that's why I tried using the sanding block to give it some tooth. But obviously it's not going to work. So this, I can just wash it off with some alcohol, let it dry, and then what I'll go do is go back, get some dull coat and spray it. But my intention to do with the roofing here is that you would lay the sheet on like that, and then you want to take your blade and, like in thirds here, you want to streak it like across two, then in the middle, then across two, every two seams. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So here, if we start here, we'll do a seam across these two. Just take your knife and make a seam, and then across these two in the middle, then the next two in thirds again. And what that does is it simulates the different pieces of metal that they'll put on the roof. Then at the end, you take one seam like this, cut it in the middle, and then you bend. Okay. So if you take your one seam right here on the end and cut it in the middle, then you can take it and lay it across with the seam on the center of the roof, and that becomes your cap strip. So that would form a cap strip on your roof that would go over top of the metal on both sides. So that's my plan. Obviously, I'm a little bit behind the guys here, but that's my plan for the roof. So Andy, on to you.
Yeah, and I'm using a metal product as well, a different one. I have the same one you have. I've got a few different ones of those from different manufacturers. I think the one that I've used on this structure, on the part of it that I've done, and the part we'll talk more about in a moment, is this stuff from Northeastern Scale Lumber. I've got a couple of these also for Builder and Scale, different size ribs of raised seam. I've used each of those on different structures and good results. I, like Barry, use these as whole pieces, and because the cap covers where the seam should be a lot. But this, the material we're going to work with tonight, I'm going to cut and then put away. But I cut it first and make it into small panels. It's pretty straightforward to cut, but you want to get panels that are roughly that size. Now, you're going to overlap with this material. It was overlapped in the real world and nailed with rubber coated nails these days, or back in my era, lead wrapped nails, because lead was in everything. So apparently, so you want to get a material that's three foot on my structure. From what I can tell from the picture that I showed last month, that I can bring up in a moment, of the prototype picture that I'm modeling it to simulate. They were lapped at with about 2 foot visible. So anything over 2 foot, leave you a little bit of lap so you can put these pieces on. And we'll cut one of these pieces. They cut with a X-Acto or scissors would cut it, especially since you're overlapping it. They cut pretty well with scissors. I also have a new tool that I'll show you in a moment that could also be used. But the easiest trick, too, once you get started cutting anyway, what I do is lay a piece, because it just has to get pretty close to it anyway. And I think this would be a good idea to use I don't know if you can cut straight through it. I was going to say you could use a tool like a chopper or something, but I don't think you could get straight through it. I've scored a couple times. It's pretty thin material. But it'll tear up a blade, so you can all blade on it. If you were going to expose it in, like I did, like you have to, at the end of the roof, this structure uses the same style of roofing that Barry's used on his, that same high raised seam, 1 foot. Actually, I think they're like 18-inch panels. And I run each strip and then lap the strips. And when I weather this, I will weather those laps down fairly heavy. That's where rain will catch. So, but you can use it in whole sheets, but you want to take the edge off a little bit. So, a file will take the edge off, but my wife laughs at me for calling that a sanding stick when I send her after sanding sticks. I think it's a nail file, but send her after sanding sticks and she knows what I want. So if you put it on the edge, you might want to file that. But I'll show you. So if I do these whole sheets, I will, depending on the type of weathering you want to do. So I've used 2 different types recently with pretty good result. And I'm going to show you how to do one of them, talk about the 2. So on the roof that we're actually doing on a lot of, not all, you'll see various different pieces. There's a couple slump stacks have to go here as well. So I expect that water will collect around these and soot and all kinds of stuff. These panels should have degraded more so I have more rough panels as I get over into the center of the roof where the stacks are, and along the edges you'll get some, and I'm going to go back and powder this some too. I also do a technique that I watched on a video a long time ago, years ago, and I just remembered it some time ago, and it's a George Celios technique, and it's for real extreme weathering, and this is quite common. I mean, there's roofs still in East Kentucky today on structures that haven't fallen down, or in the Appalachians especially, that haven't fallen down, that look like this. They're rough all the way through. And, the rust gets heavy and has some odd colors, and it's fairly extreme. This one I'm going to show you how to do is really easy, and you don't have to dull coat for it. That's kind of a nice plus. And it can't be wrong if George Celios does it that way. So, glue of some kind of PVA. I use Mod Podge for like everything. white glue is probably good for most of these purposes, but since I just buy Mod Podge, so that it's really flat. And moist brush and pick powders up, and you can streak the powders. And it's the same. It's a real similar effect the way Miles was doing his. A couple different colors, and they mix together. And that's exactly what happens in the real world. The rain will come down, hit a certain mineral, and blend all through the colors. Where the iron has impurities in it, the steel has impurities in it. As it'll degrade, it'll have different color. And then I also, like these guys, it is a fairly common trick to do. One of the best known tricks in modeling. And actually, it may be Miles is who I learned to do this from. So it'd be horrible for me to reteach the trick back or talk about the trick. But you get these fairly extreme colored panels. And then after they set up, you can come back and just touch them. And so, I mean, they won't come off in your fingers, but just touch them with a soft file or rub them pretty good or take an eraser to it, and you can expose more of the underlying metal or the shininess to it. So, and I also, like these guys, use transfer tape. I had the best luck using that as well. On the edges of it, my structure from the original photo, half of the structure is roll roofing, half the structure is metal roofing because it looks like they built on. But you could see under the edge of the gable, you could see the lathing strips that come out and the underside of the metal. So when I did this, I cut strips back into the roofing to make these strips that come out. Fairly easy addition to do. And then you can, then you can expose the metal from underneath, and it costs you a stick of wood, which as you start building some of these wood kits, you're going to end up with a few boxes of wood parts, and they're pretty easy to scavenge some parts from. But if you guys want to talk about, the next steps where you guys are at with where you're going with the structure, what you're going to do next, I can put a couple pieces down and we can come back and to the next part. Where you at, Miles?
I'm putting lights in, so I'm wiring up. I took some LEDs. I'm sorry, but Woody's my sidekick, Woodland Scenic. So these are two just plug of the stick-up lights, and I cut holes, dropped them in place. I think you're looking at this camera. And then on the bottom side, I've split these wires off. And you may ask, well, if it's plug and play and it already has the plug, which it does on the bottom of it, why did you cut them off? Well, I want some way to be able to remove this roof. As Andy and I were talking last week, getting ready for the show, he was talking about being able to get in and change it out. And I'll let him talk about, he's doing it for something totally different and in a different way. But nonetheless, he had a roof on his thing. And I thought, well, I really need a roof on my shed because, first of all, the white will reflect better in here. So I took a piece of wide basswood and cut it. I think it was yesterday or the day before. And it perfectly fits inside. I did that by taking the wood and measuring actually at and this is one reason not to glue all this together yet, because you're still working with pieces and parts. I laid this down on my long strip, lined it up on this edge and on this edge, marked it and cut it to fit so that it exactly fits inside there. So it's nice tight fit. Because these guys, if we look at the ribs, are not quite so tight. I think you can see, if I move it down a bit, you can see I've got some gapping in here, so it's not quite. But once I drop that roof in place, you can see it's a whole lot tighter, which is what I really wanted. I wanted people to look in and see that the ceiling looks like it's actually supposed to be part of this building. So anyway, that's how I got it cut to size. Now I've got to put lights on. So how am I going to do it, and how am I going to make it lift out? Well, the thing I thought about the other night when I couldn't go to sleep, and I was thinking about this problem, is that if I had these wires, let's turn it over like it's going to be, attached here, and you can see I've bent them over. I hope you can see that. Then what I'm going to do is drill a hole down here in the corner of the building, and I'll have one wire here, and my other wire is over here. This one will be in the diagonal opposite corner, and I'll drill a hole there, and I'll drop those through right in the corner, and that will be my electrical contacts then down underneath inside the railroad, and that's where I'll come back then and attach these just plug plugs, double talk, back on, and then I'll be able to put it on my controller. And the neat thing about the just plug, of course, is that while Wood and Scenic sells this as one plug in one socket for one light, in actuality, we've talked about it here on YouTube Model Builders, and I've talked about it on some of my videos. You can plug about 10 or 15 lights into one of these sockets. Sorry, little Dr. Pepper, it never hurts. So at any rate, I can plug both of these onto one of my sockets and not strain the unit. And that's what I've done here. I've started to wire up my grays. I'll put them on both the grays on this side nearest me here and hook it up to my brass wire here. I'll take the black wires, hook them together and put it over here. Okay, so why did I put on a thin wire? Well, that's because if you noticed it 2 or 3 times over you've been watching me, I'm looking at these ribs and I'm thinking, how am I going to glue on here? Well, now my thick wires are going to fall in this gap. Hope you can see that. That's better. The thick wires will fall in this gap here and here. Get it over where it belongs. And then only this really tiny thin wire has to go across here. So when I glue this on, it'll glue on much tighter and much better than if I had run these thick wires. Then I would have had to cut grooves in all of these rafters. But this way I can just simply glue it on and don't have to worry about too much. Put my corner wires on and I'm in good shape. So Andy alluded to, yes, I do it like I'm making money. Yeah, I did it for many, many years to make money. So my mind thinks about what's the fastest, easiest, quickest, most reliable way to do it. And sometimes not always the best that I come up with, but we try. But that's what I'm doing, is putting lights in here on the top. And then I'll go to putting windows and doors in here sometime like you guys are doing.
Miles, I don't believe anybody could argue with the quality of output. My speed doesn't keep up. I think enough number of years of experience, I think any of us would get a little faster than I currently am. I sure enjoy the work process, but it's not a quick one for me.
The brother I never had, John Lawrence, down in San Antonio, we had him working for a while, building models. And he said that was the one thing that he had the biggest problem getting used to, was I kept telling him, it's good enough, it's good enough. And most of the time, and this show is promoting things that aren't necessarily good enough. You're trying to promote things that are just fantastic, supercalifragilistic, wonderful. And I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in the fact that I had issued a budget similar to the installations that you do for your bank computer systems. If you've bid the bank at, I don't know, let's say you bid one at $1, and you don't do that, but let's say you do, and somebody takes $5 worth of time to put it together, you just lost money.
Absolutely.
So for me, I was always trying to put it together and make sure that I still made it under budget. And somebody who's sitting there and takes 5 hours to put in 6 windows, that doesn't cut it. So faster's better.
Barry, how are you coming along?
Well, I got my roofing on now on the sub base. I actually hit it with some dull coat, the powders are still not sticking. So, it's hard to tell, but let me get it out of the light. Yeah, see, it frosted it over, but the colors are not very concentrated. So I probably need to dull coat this whole thing, let it dry, and then probably hit it with some washes. But I used the transfer tape. I had the 3M permanent double-side tape that I put on because I had that laying around. So I got my 2 pieces on. They're cut to size. The only thing I had to do is cut the chimney opening. Now, what I was alluding to before, if you can see, shine off it. You see there's a seam near the end here. So if I cut down here, I can use that for my cap strip. So what I'll do is I'll take and cut this right about there. All right. we go. Now I cut it a little crooked, but you'll get the idea. So what we want to do now is we put this over the top like that, and then you have to bend it down a little bit. So take it kind of like, let me see. Put the knife down. Bend it in a little bit of a V. And then when you put it down there, that'll become your cap strip for your roof. So let me see if I can bring that up where you can see it better. There you go. So that's to protect the rain from getting into the opening in the roof on the top. So then you can just take and fit some thin pieces of tape in there and glue it down, or use a little bit of super glue and glue this down. And you'll need to overlap them over on, along the whole ridge seam. But like I said earlier, if you want to mimic the seams, we'll start with 2 here. So we'll just take and do a little X-Acto cut like that. And there's your seams. And the next one here, you'll start in the middle. And now you have, I don't know if it's hard to see or not, but let's see. See if we can see them there. Yeah, let me switch to my overhead camera. Because once you weather it some, it'll actually probably stand out a little bit more. Okay. That's my better cameras on top. Yeah, you can see it right here, right there. Yeah, it's hard to tell. Oops, let me, there you go. So I got to work out a little better system for weathering the metal, but it's pretty easy to work with, so I just got to figure out a weathering scheme is all. So.
Well, I've had pretty good luck with George's technique of adding liquids to the powders as well. So I don't know if it would work with an alcohol. In my experience, it comes off pretty easy, but the little bit of glue and a whole lot of water seems to stick the powders to it too. And I am using.
Yes, that's what I got to do some research. I mean, I just happened to. When I was at the Greenberg Train Show, I always go visit my buddy Dave Thompson over Harbor Beltlines, and he's where I get like all my Mount Albert scale lumber and stuff from. And I happened to see this there. I said, you know what, that would be an interesting thing to use for the building. So I decided to buy it. So, time to move on to windows and doors.
Yeah, I had a really good time with the windows.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So, if you guys want me to, I'll start with the windows.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see this process anyway. I've heard a lot of different modelers talk about this. I heard you talk about it on several meetings now, and I'm fascinated with it. So,
yeah, let me switch back to the close bench cam. Okay. So what I've done is I use the product called Gallery Glass, and I'll show you how to apply it in a minute, but shine on those windows there.
yes, sir. I could see a reflection.
Yeah, see that? You see how they look like old Ripple glass. I did the 3 of them, these 3 here. Learned a little bit about it because I've only used it one time before. But it's real easy to do. So, tool tip for the day. Old business cards, great for glue, and various other things. So to apply the gallery glass, it's real easy to do. I got it at Hobby Lobby for $2.77. I could do, what's that? I was over near the craft paints. So there were a couple miles off from there. There was stuff for doing like stained glass, because this is crystal clear, but they have an innumerable amount of colors, and it's designed to simulate stained glass. They even have one that looks like leading, so you could take on a piece of acrylic and draw a pattern, and then you flood these colors in between, and when they dry and thin out, they're transparent. This is what's called crystal clear. So you just pop the top off. And little glue bubble on. Yep, there we go. And then just squirt a teeny bit. I won't need much of anything. A little dot like that should be enough for one set of windows, right? And this is my one window. You want to apply it from the back side because if you do it from the front, you can get it on your finish on the front of your window. So, all right. So we just take, it's hard to see like that, but take your toothpick and put it in and roll it. So you pick up a little bead. Okay. So you like a little bit more. And then you got to take it and get it on the edges there and build a little bit of it up. And just, then you can just take it and work it right across. Sometimes it's a little tricky. It takes practice. Once you get doing it, there you go. You see that? It formed a film. And then you just very gently, see if you roll it off too fast. There we go. Okay. Now I very gently go around the edges and get up any excess. So now, at that one lower corner, you can see it. It's got glass in it. And this will take 3 or 4 hours to set up where it's semi-clear. And then at that point, it's kind of solidified. So let's do this again. Put a little one here. There we go. So you get better after you do it a couple times, then you figure it out again. And then so you got to kind of roll the toothpick a little bit. There we go. So you can also roll it back and then spread it out to the next window. Bingo. There's that one. And then we'll roll that one. And that's how you apply. What's that? You wet. You have to wait till it firms up after maybe an hour. Then you could actually poke a hole in it with a toothpick. You see, if it's thick enough, you can put your toothpick in it and pull some of it out to spread around to other windows. But if you're not careful, you just pop the film. Yeah, like I did this one. There we go. And there, that's it. It's hard to say, but I very cautiously take. Yeah, see, I just popped that one. Right here, I popped it. So I just go around the back and clean up the edges. And sometimes I got to redo the window. Especially with these windows, they have adhesive tape on the back. So what happens is if you let it sit up too hard in there, it'll be hard pulling the tape off. See if I can just pull that right across like that one time and nice and clean. So it takes practice, but and the result looks so fantastic. And there you go. You can see it in there now. So I'm pretty happy with the way the gallery glass works. And what I'll usually do is you can't let it sit on the workbench because if it touches the surface, it'll pop. So I usually set it up in a pair of tweezers and let it go. So, all right. Who's got the next window?
Acetone. Does that get as rigid as acetone once it's hardened up?
It's pretty hard. I mean, you'd have to, when I was doing that window, I forgot to leave one open. So it had already started to set up. So I poked and it went pop and pop through with a toothpick. And then.
Okay. I wondered. Yep.
Yeah. And then what happened was the X-Acto the extra material out. And then I just went and redid it now so you could see what it looks like.
That's fascinating stuff. I've heard a bunch of artists talk about that, but
you know what it is? It gives you that real good effect of old glass.
Absolutely.
saw on this one pane here, you pull the transfer tape off the back, and that just glues. Well, let me see. Yeah, there's one here. It glues into here, just like this one here and here.
Yep.
They're separate. You can see it's raised up along here. So that's your lower sash. So this would sit like that on your model.
Especially good for era, especially the era I model it for historic eras, and it's still today, of course. I think
Yeah, there you go. There's a nice, see the nice shine on that now?
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, when you look at it close, it really does look like old ripple glass. So it really has some benefits to, doing it that way. So.
Testers. Yeah, I think I've seen that too. There's a few products that do this same result I've seen, but I just hadn't seen anybody actually.
I think there used to be something like it, like Microsol, that was similar to it, crystal clear or something like that. I think I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but you might be able to use clear canopy cement either, too.
That same Larry Deal here in Kansas City, he uses
What, Miles?
He uses Elmer's School
Elmer's.
Glue. And he says the Elmer's School Glue is first of all, it's clear and it's really thin, similar to the product that you're using there.
Yeah, that's the one benefit to this is it's really clear.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's crystal clear. The Elmer's might make a little frosted look to the window.
No, his are clear. That School Glue.
Are they?
Yeah, it comes out really clear.
Yeah, so here.
He's using the same results you are. He's just using the School Glue instead of the commercial product.
All right, that's a good idea then. That's something to put in the books.
Yeah.
So I'm taking off the masking on the transfer tape here on the back of these windows. As you see, it's a little hard because I put the gallery glass on, so it's making it a little more difficult to peel this stuff off because it's sort of got gallery glass on it. There we go. So now we'll go and put this into one of our window openings. Earlier, I painted and put the windowsill piece in here, just put a little glue on the bottom, and then kind of tilted it down in and pressed it in place. And now, put this right. Oops. Come on. Yeah, it's hard to see this way, so let me do it. Here we go.
Andy, you were talking about making mistakes. I just made a mistake on my drop downs here. I thought that they were going to go on opposite corners, but I drilled the wrong opposite corners, so I just had to drill them again. So it'll never show, but
that's what we do. We make mistakes at it. You correct them, and wood's pretty cover it up.
That's right.
There we go. So now we have a window in there. Nice and bright and shiny looking. And
absolutely,
the door here on the inside was glued in from the inside, but the door is so I'll let someone else take a turn now, and I'll show you how I weathered the look of the door in a minute. So if Andy or Miles, if you guys want to go cover something while I'm working on this, or when I get to work on this, I'll come back.
Miles, you had a good point. You catch us up on where you're working at.
Well, if you're going to talk about weathering windows, let's see. I need to go to the other camera again to show you what was going on. So let's bring that one up. Come over here. This is my door for my O scale, and you can see it's looks like it's peeled paint. In actuality, what I did was I used a magic marker. In this case, it is a fabric magic marker from Fabric Mate. I think it was probably Joann's or Michael's or something. So I liked it because it's a nice, really dark green. And I used it actually on this building as well, but colored it with the marker. And then I came back with sandpaper. I think we can get a close enough up with this.
Yeah, that looks good.
And sanded it.
Oh,
And,
okay.
just sanding it down. First of all, it brought the grain back out, and it knocked a bunch of the paint off. So it actually gave me a pretty good, I think anyway, weathered look to my doors that are going in. Did the same thing with the windows. I can show you here. I haven't knocked these out of the holder yet, but you can see the way the kit is made. These pieces come out and go behind the actual door. So you can see here where I've sanded across that already and made it so that it looks like it's peeled. I think we could probably pop one of these. Yeah, let's do it this way. Just slip that in behind and show you. But that's essentially what it will look like when it goes together. I could have painted the boards, the trim boards, as a white or a gray and then made the green, but my general, when I talk and I do clinics, I think Bob Lundy, that started DPM Models, said it the best. If you're a railroad or if you're a person that owns a building, landlord, whatever, you're going to buy paint to paint the entire building. And you would like to buy one color in volume because it's cheaper. So in a commercial building, you would buy something that looked very contrasty and very nice to the front of your building to attract people to it because you wanted your leaser to be able to make money out of the space that he's leasing from you. The railroads, by the same token, usually, if you notice, picked about 2 colors. You don't see 5 color and 10 color paint jobs on buildings for stations. They're usually a white wash and a color or a gray wash and a color. And so I just decided, you know, they would have bought some green to put on here because that's the color of my railroad. Gray is a normal color, so I just kind of let the natural wood be the gray color. But you don't want to get too fancy with your color schemes because if you want them to look more prototypical, because railroads just didn't spend that much money on paint and making these buildings attractive. My 2 cents.
So the building's job was, that's important to remember to model to, that's why photos are so valuable in most modelers people, because you model to what's out there, what's really there. And the railroads buildings were there to make money, not to look any particular way.
That's right. Only people in these buildings were maintenance staff, and they sure didn't care about them very much. Sorry to say.
No, as you go back and look at photos, it seems quite evident that they didn't care that much about this structure I'm modeling off of. But it got better as if you model a more modern era. But in my era and in the older eras, it's quite obvious they didn't care a whole lot about. Just as long as the structure would hold the water out.
That's right.
And if you like recreating that, and a lot of modelers do, the urban sprawl, the dirtiness of that, all the way to, you know, the type of modeling from the 50s that I really like. And these section houses, like what this kit is based off from, is essentially a railroad bunkhouse and sometimes office space, done double duty as office space for the crewmen to write orders. So you just need to keep the rate off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what I did for mine to get some of my weathered look here was, where are you? Ah, there you are. I did everything with an undertone color, driftwood gray, which is a hunter line, alcohol, and dye mix. And then for the walls, I used their barn red color. So this is what my building turns out like. And what I did after I put the gray down, I used some Elmer's rubber cement and just took one of the little green micro brushes, put it on there and just dotted it around and then let it dry. And then I came back and I tried using my gum eraser to rub it off, but it kind of really stuck to it. So what I ended up doing was then I took one of these after I rubbed the eraser on it and just rub up and get the rubber cement off after I put the red coat on. and it actually worked pretty well. It needs a little more. I think next time I would do more. Especially concentrate down the bottom of your walls here, where it would be rotting out. Another thing you can do is take your X-Acto and chip at the wood, make it look splintered and stuff, and then do a black wash so that it highlights the cuts you've made. To get my weathered look for the doors and windows and the edge trim too, as you can see the trim boards on the edge, I did the same thing, base coat of driftwood gray, but then I used the Hunter Lines Cottage White, which is, it's still a ink mix, but it's got some kind of, I think what the heck is it? It's like an acrylic medium in it to get the darker color. So what I did is just start doing this because these are, what happens if you brush them, they tend to spread out real easily. So I just went like this to get that weathered look. My base color, and then just dab it with a little round micro brush. Okay. I don't know if you guys can actually see what I'm doing here. There you go. Let me get some more on here. I'll bring it up closer to camera. So I'm just taking it and dabbing it on like this. And it leaves it semi-transparent. The nice thing is it's not going on super heavy. You can see I don't have much on the little brush. And then you can put it on heavier in some areas and lighter in other. And let it dry for a couple minutes and then come back and hit it again. And that leaves you with a nice kind of worn paint, weathered look. And then go in here to get the edges, around the side there. And then let it dry, and then I'll come back and do it again and again until I get the color that I want to see. And then I let it dry overnight, and then just use the same little brush, put a little white glue, or I use carpenter's glue on the back of this piece, and then glue it onto the front piece, and then I have a door. And this is what it ends up looking like right here.
Yeah, comment about that. AJ in the YouTube live stream talk about a fiberglass eraser work better than a regular one for scuffing those up. And that,
that's a good idea.
And those are fascinating. I've talked to, I've listened to, and this brought something to my mind too. Is I've seen Ralph use one several times to have him talk about the Ralph Renzetti, and they're a fascinating little contraption that looks like a mechanical pencil, but it rolls up multiple little fiberglass strands, or you can get them in metal of some kind.
You can get brass and stainless steel, I think.
Right.
They look like a little bristle brush on the end when you push it out, and you push it farther to make it softer and pull it back so there's only stubs sticking out to make it real hard.
Yeah, I've seen them used for in some of the weathering for rolling stock to degrade the stamp-on paint that is on them. A piece of rolling stock on a box car or something. It's really good for removing some of that stuff. But that brought something to my mind I wanted to bring up too, is that the E-Bag's out and it's on fine scale. Coincidentally, since we've talked about that a lot. And Ralph Renzetti, there's an interview with our very own Miles Hale and Mr. Ralph Renzetti on their ideas about fine scale modeling and the kind of work that they do that's unique, and that was a really good read. I wrote an article for that too on what I thought the definition of fine scale is, because it means some different things to all of us. I think all of us would agree that this is the reason that we work so hard to find a decent title for this show between Craftsman and fine scale, et cetera, because you can be sure, like Miles said, the goal of fine scale is that you're taking that extra step, that you're going that little bit further. But the e-bag was a really good read this month.
Yeah, it actually was.
So let me catch you up on where I got to. I stuck a few roofing pieces down so we can carry on. I want to show the unique material that I found for working with windows as well. But I also illuminated my structure too, added lights to it, and weathered some of that interior with some chalks, which also brought up a funny memory that I deal with all the time. These cutting mats, I want to put a piece of glass down. I think that'd probably be better because you end up with the thing that Mary was talking about, where they just, you get the powders all over the desk. And I head out of the trade room after staying in here way too late many times and looked down at my elbows and they're rust colored. So
yeah, well, as you can see, I'll put the camera down. You see my mat takes a beating. Now I can tone that down and wipe it with alcohol, but glass will be better or come off much better.
Yep.
And if you do any cardboard modeling, is absolute to get good hard cuts.
Yeah, certain things. I mean, in painting processes, there's a lot of things that glass will be good for. It's rough on blades, so I hear. So there's still a place for a cutting mat for what we're doing. But I built a roofing structure in mine as well. Now I put some square stock across it and built these little frames on the ends that step down in to so that the roof would set down and be fully suspended, not have any light areas I run my wires through. And I used a couple of the 3D printed globes that our own Ed Traxler has been designing on Shapeways. Those are really, really cool. And they're a quite different look. And as I get to windows in a second, I'll explain to you why that detail makes a difference, because you can see the difference in just a bulb emitting light versus putting those, you see that globe emitting the light, especially at a reasonable brightness. But I built those frames as well. I found a unique material for working with glass. I've been wanting to work with some real glass for a long time. I bought microscope tiles that come with the cover tiles some time ago. Cover tiles are 3,000s, I think. I think they're 3,000s, but that was the cover glass. It's not even the scope tile. They're quite a bit thinner. I found this material while looking for the microscope glass, not looking for a modeling product, and found this material from Sierra Scale Models. This is a real glass material, and it's actually, I'm sorry, microscope tile is whatever it is, about 3 times as thick as this. This is 3,000s. This stuff is so thin, you lay it on the cutting mat. You can't cut it on a cutting mat because you can put it on the cutting mat, put one finger on it, and it pops, which may be a desirable effect if you wanted broken glass. But I'm going to show you how I cut it. And it has a reflective quality that I haven't found any other product that recreates that real reflection of glass. Where if you look in the window straight on in a relatively bright lit area, you see yourself in the window, but at the right angle, it's a very crystal clear view of seeing all the interior details that Miles was talking about, that I'm going to do for the structure. It's very near the fascia and track side of an important structure. And then we're going to cover more about in upcoming episodes. But I'm going to show you how I cut it. And I bought this tool that was a good stand-in for that fiber brush we were just talking about. This is a carbide tip pencil, whatever, carbide tip cutter. You can cut glass with it, but you can they cut various materials with it, but specifically glass. And Sierra Scale Models sells this. I'm sure you can buy it somewhere else. It's a tool, but they sell it for fairly reasonable price as well. Now, I really like that material that Barry's working with too, especially for smaller windows, which these would apply for as well. This material works so well for windows.
Andy, your camera just went off.
Pardon me?
You went dark.
Miles, will you show us where you're at, what you're working with?
Yeah, I was trying to line everything up, of course. So what I've got is my wires here are actually going down now through the corners. I showed that a minute ago if anybody's watching. I actually put them through my corner blocks here. And so what I did was I took the shell, put it over the top here, got everything lined up, glued up. You know, those of you that watched before know I like to use fingers, not toothpicks or whatever for putting the glue on. So I glued my ribs up, got plenty of glue on those so that this will stick, hopefully. Then put my body back on, put the roof in, or the ceiling in, so that it hopefully all lines up then when all of this goes back together, so that we won't have a building that doesn't fit. So that's all in together. Everything's lined up, and now I'm just taking a look at what I'm going to have to do here in order to hold this, because obviously it's not sealing really tight. And I think what I'm going to do is go to my old trusty masking tape. I usually try, if I'm going to pull it off, bend a tab of it over, stick it on here and pull it tight. And after I get a few of these on, excuse me, I'll slip the shell back on just to make sure that I haven't moved things by pushing on them. It's going to be my clamping system while this glue dries. And since I've used wood, why, it's a really nice thing, because now I don't have to worry about it later on. I can come back and take the tape off. If I'd used cardboard, it might have been a little bit more tricky, but a little bit trickier, however you want to word it. There we go. Everything still lines up, so I'm in good shape. Hopefully that will dry nice and tight, at least here on the ends. I'm not too much worried about in the center, although what we could do, the other thing, we've talked about these before too, is the 1, 2, 3 blocks. That's these things. They're 1 inch by 2 inches by 3 inches. And if you happen to have another thing called a V block, that's this guy. It has a V in it. Really nice for doing roofs, because you set that in there. And I need a weight on the center. So, whoops, move back over where you can see it. There we go. Put the V block in, put the roof in the V block, put the weight on there, and now everything should glue together and be nice and tight. And we can shove that assembly out of the way until tomorrow morning, probably when it's dried out. I don't know. Is he back on? Is he black? I can't see.
Yeah, he's back. Yeah.
Well,
and I'm going to try my trim board the same way you guys are.
Except when Google lets us down. So the technology is wonderful, but
yeah, but
less than perfect. So I have to put this on a material harder. So if you're cutting on glass, probably, except this would probably cut your glass. So this little paint stick is just perfect. But if you put too much pressure, it will break. But so I give you all these things to scare you from using this product, but I swear it's pretty doggone easy to use. So just don't put too much pressure. You're safe. Just a straight cut with the carbide tip cutter. Take a few passes, but if you put, it will break if you don't take your time. But it's for the patient. And you can cut perfect little small little glass slivers the height of that. See, too small, you can't even see it in the camera. So of course it's glass. That's the nature of the beast. But you can cut these glass panels to put in the upper and lower sash, 2 separate panels for that. I use transfer tape that comes on them, of course, the peel and stick that's on there, but I don't necessarily trust it. So any type of windows that I do, acetate windows, rather, like I do for plenty of the structures, especially background structures, that's plenty adequate. Got a square. Some people just slap it on the inside of the wall because you're not going to see it. But the vast majority of my structures will have interiors, and I expect people to look in. They'll be illuminated. So I use canopy glue and just cut the acetate or whatever to the size of the window. I also do various window details while I'm putting it in, and will open the windows, of course, with structures. One of the great things about it with plastic structures, no offense, nothing against them, and there's also great styrene structures on the market. Just like there are wood structures, there's expensive and high quality of each style that give you different flexibility. But with wood structures, you have a lot of control over the way this structure ends up looking. And you can open windows like I do on many of them. This is, May in 1950, not nearly as much air conditioning as we have in the world today, and open windows and fans in windows. Barbells and others make some little fan kits that are really cool to kind of customize. And you can open the windows or break them, especially with this type of glass. And you can do it with acetate as well. you get a broken window effect. I've done it to, unfortunately, not on purpose with this one, but it will break. You can get it's real broken glass. So you do have the.
Yeah, that is one advantage to your method, Andy, over using the gallery glass, because the gallery glass, you could poke like a hole in the corner, and even poke it with an X-Acto blade. It doesn't look as, especially in larger scales, those glass pieces you're using will be much more realistic.
Well, I think it depends a lot on where the structure is at on your layout, the height of your layout, how close you are to the viewing, and then the windows itself, and even the scale, because you're relying on the principle of physics to, and a little chemistry really, but some principles of physics for that material to adhere and spread across that gap. Whereas, glass will surely spread the gap. And for smaller windows, I'm not sure that your method's not an improvement, and it has an effect that would be hard for me to recreate. But
because you're going to get smooth windows with your method.
Yeah, we're doing storefront windows. These big square windows, I've sized it to make sure they'll fit for this. So I could do these really interesting storefronts on this structure, put full interiors in. So there's just different depending.
I don't know if anybody noticed while I was waiting for Andy here, I went back with my brush and applied another coat of white on here. So now I think that's good. It's fairly well covered. It looks a little faded. So I'm going to let this dry, and then tomorrow I'll be able to glue it, and we'll be good there. And the gallery glass is now clear. It's got to harden overnight. I let it sit for 24 hours before I handle it. But now it's pretty much, I'd have to poke it with a toothpick to break it. But it's ready to go. Just got to let it cure, and then peel this off, stick it to the other window frame, and then stick the window frame in the model like these two. And then all the windows will be ready. When this is assembled, the door will be ready. I just glue the door in. Then the structure shell is done. And for my floor in here, the walls I'm painting white. Just regular white acrylic paint. The floor, there's that beautiful cedar color, is a Minwax wood finish stain marker. And it's just a little chisel tip. I just went and did the floors. Just rub it on there, and it came out nice and quick. It's much like in trying these Winsor Newton markers that Miles had mentioned. So I might try them in another structure. See how they turn out for the actual structure color. So, but I happen to like the dark gray with the barn red color over for this. It looks old, worn, and faded looking. So I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out.
Absolutely.
Andy, the Clark Koenig that does, he does the modeling with the masters on the NMRA program for the NMRA conventions.
Yes, sir.
He's a sworn believer, and as a matter of fact, in almost every one of his modeling with the masters classes, he actually takes his, and he uses only a Starrett. He thinks Starrett is the best. And it's a Starrett carbide scriber, and cuts that cover plate slide glass like you're using. But he's an absolute believer in real glass, and it harkens back to the times when John Lawrence and I used to be together in San Antonio. And John always had this saying that if you were in doubt about what material to make a building part out of, use the same thing the prototype did. So if it was a concrete building, pour it in concrete. It's kind of extreme, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
If it was wood, make it out of wood. If it was steel, then you can obviously use plastic. But try to simulate the material that was used in the reel.
Yeah, some of these things are close to each other. Like brass is a good replicator for steel, obviously. Brass locomotives
right,
quite good as well. And I'm not sure it's worth the trouble for every particular location, but boy, I'm sold on it. And most of my structures are acetate. I've got fine effects with them, and they look pretty good. Even with light behind them. I'd like to see what that gallery glass looked like with interior lighting behind it, but. Even the acetate, but it's not as reflective. It doesn't have a smoother surface. But I'm a huge believer in the mixed medium. That's kind of, I don't know if you should call it grown in popularity, but it's grown in acceptance of mixing mediums these days. I'm not at all against styrene because I prefer wood structures. I think it's a great material for a lot of things. I mean, this metal roof on this structure is a styrene roof. Looks just fine. It's not weathered, but and it's before I learned about these material, the wood materials. And the windows are acetate. I got pretty good effects out of those windows. And they've got curtains blowing out of some of the open windows, and maybe we'll model some of those interior details at some point too. Of course, it's not like me to do something. The guys who hang out with us on the hangout, it's not like me to overdo something or go over.
We're so conservative.
Real glass is right up my alley. That's entirely not out of my personality type, but so we Johnny, do you want to take a break and talk about our community sub? Tell people how they can get to find more of the shows.
He was taking a nap. You woke him up.
That's right. Well, I mean, we want to bring attention to the EMAG just released.
Yeah.
And of course, it's right up, what we're talking about on the show, high quality modeling.
Alrighty. I want to tell everybody, go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. There you'll find the schedules for the shows, the Tuesday, the Wednesday show, and the Saturday live show. You can check schedules there. The Tuesday and Wednesday shows are at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern. Thursday and the Saturday live show is 9 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And also, while you're on the website, be sure and click on the e-magazine and sign up for that. JD and his team do a great job of putting that out every other month. It's bi-monthly. So, and they do have a good team of contributing authors for articles and all. So if you do want to do an article, just go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com, click on the e-mag, and you'll find the JD's email address there. You can email him and let him know what you want to do, or he'll give you ideas of what he needs for upcoming issues or future issues. And like JD says, if you think you cannot write, that's okay. Go ahead and write it, send it in. He's got a great team. They'll help you polish it up a little bit. They're not really mean people. They just help you do it because they realize not everybody writes for publications. So, but they'll make you look good. Let's see now. We've got this was the last show for this month, but we do have some other shows coming up in April the 5th. It'll be the first Arduino show of the month. Now there is a slight change in the schedule. So Barry does have his workbench show coming up, but it will be on a Thursday night. That will be April the 6th. So you want to be sure and keep an eye out and make it to Barry's workbench. Then we have another show on April 11th. That's going to be with Miles Hale. You doing a layout tour, Miles?
Joe Robertson's HO Railroad.
Okay. And then we'll come back to the 19th for the Arduino workshop. And then the 25th will be the last fine scale for the month. And of course, the live show is going to be on the 15th, and that'll be with Barry and Big Bill. So we got a pretty good lineup on next month also. So be sure and check in on YouTubeModelBuilders.com. Check your schedules and times. So if you can, if it's not the middle of the night for you, depending on what part of the continent you're on or country or whatever, you'll be able to catch the show.
We do have some international viewers.
Yeah, and also these shows are recorded, so all you gotta do is go to YouTube, look up YouTube Model Builders, and we have playlists for each one of our shows, so it makes it easier for you to find the show you're looking for, and you can catch up on any back shows you might have missed. And if I done enough table dancing, Andy, or?
Yeah, I think I'll cover it for the moment. It's about as much as I can take. I've about got the last window done, which is just about finished my structure up. A little bit of roll roof that I still got to put on the other side. That's pretty straightforward out of the kit. I'm sure there'll be a future kit where we will do some. It's a fairly common roofing material too that I want to do some more of, and Miles done that technique as well. So, and then there's quite a few other techniques that we'd like to cover. Shingles are a unique one that there's a lot of different ways to do, and I ordered some interesting material to try out the next time around when we get to that too. But there's about as many options for any of these techniques. And that's why you need so many techniques in your toolbox, because of all the variety of things that you'll need to recreate if you want to model a world in miniature.
Absolutely.
Put it through the shrink ray. That'll save a lot of time.
Yeah. That's what we try to do. That's the ultimate goal. It's just some of this stuff's quite hard to truly shrink, although you guys know I try.
It's true. You do a pretty good job, Andy.
I try. It's obsessive, and like anything else, as long as you're trying, you can't help but have some success.
True.
And some failure, and you fix and correct mistakes as you go. So,
well, obviously, as we saw tonight, my roofing didn't come out as good as I wanted it to, but
well, there's a lot of different techniques. I mean, I'm doing 3 different techniques, or let me say, I've tried 3 different techniques to come up with a satisfying roof techniques for different features. I did those 2, but this other one, the structure that I showed that had the same roofing material you're working with, that house that has not been weathered, it's because I tried weathering on some sample pieces using some oil techniques, and I didn't like the results. Now, our own Ralph Renzetti does, who was in the EMAG this month as well, he does some really exceptional weathering with oils on freight cars, and I get some pretty good results that I'm happy with, but are not, not up to par with what Ralph's doing. Not yet, but you keep going, you get better. But it's like locomotives and rolling stock is just we've had an ongoing dispute about whether his track was headlight or flex track, but because it looks so good that I argue in favor of headlight track with his is really good work, and he's good with the oils. But I tried the oils on that roof, and I got some effect like you did with the powders. They just don't adhere too well to it, even with an oil.
I don't know what I'm going to do to solve this, but
play around with it. Work with powders, a little alcohol, they'll come right off.
Yeah, I dull coated the one side, so I'm fairly happy with how that makes it look, because that tones down the bright shine for sure.
Well, the camera's not the best judge of this stuff either. I take pictures to try to show off some of the effects, because even this glass, the camera does some justice to it, but it looks a lot better in person.
Yeah.
I tell you, Larry Deal, that I've mentioned several times tonight, what he does is he puts that chalk down, and then he uses mineral spirits brushed right on it, and it actually liquefies that chalk, and it'll make a really interesting effect for you, and it will automatically dull those chalks for you.
I'll have to try it. I just need to figure out. That's why I figure I put the dull coat on here and see if it gives me a base to adhere to,
Yep.
And so I'll have to play around with that more. I still got the other side of the roof they didn't spray. So,
well, George Stelios used this technique, the one I got from him, and it's pretty hard to argue with anything George is doing. That's
true. You can't argue with one of the masters of the universe,
But I like that technique. For most of the roof that I completed so far, I used etching. I used black, a blackening product or etch it. Most of my roof is done that way, but you need some diversity. This stuff changes color in funny ways. If you want real heavy tiles, I have better luck using powders and glue to do that. But where I wanted some of, and I wanted some kind of degraded panels, and that etch it will eat some of the roofing material away. A real nice effect, but the webcams just they won't show the kind of hittiness and texture of that roof. They just can't show that. And in person, you could see these little pits and holes and digs in it where the material's degrading. And I use that some, and I use some of the powder effects like we did before. But
yeah, I got to do some pondering to see what would be a good effect.
And there's sure a lot of ways to do that. How close are you guys to having structures? So we can talk about how you guys would play at these on your layouts or dioramas if you were going to. You guys pretty close?
Well, the one thing that I like for at least doing structure bases where you could put just a minimum of scenery around it, the gator foam, because it's nice and rigid. It doesn't warp when it gets wet. It's some kind of wood laminate with and it's resin impregnated, so you can soak it in wood and will not warp. So that makes good sturdy structure bases. Yeah, I just tried lifting the little transfer tape on the back corner of this window, and the little bit of base, the gallery glass started peeling up. So let it set overnight. It's clear now, but it's not hard yet. So
I did that for this structure as well. I built a small base. I used
I saw that you had done that. Yeah,
but I used foam core for a tremendous number of things. I put a square base on it, cut a spot in the layout, and put other little square blocks underneath this of 5/16 or something, square stock material, something reasonably large that I had laying around. And there's a big hole underneath it for my electronics for one of your next shows where we talk about the control circuitry under the structure.
Exactly, yeah.
It has this hole and the structure, and I do it a couple different ways depending on how much electronics I need there. A lot of my structures just have a little square, like I showed on the first show, glued to the scenery or glued to the Hobosote or styrofoam base, and I build my scenery to do that so that the structure sets down and there's no way to see the light around the bottom of it for sure. That's
right
thing. And me and Miles and Barry were all talking about this, Johnny, too, on the last show. One of our pet peeves is seeing a hundreds of tons structure floating in midair. There's magic happening, and it's not making sense. I like them to set in. Most of the time, I just put that square, build up the scenery to it, set the structure on it, and then adjust the height of the scenery. Or a lot of times grass and weeds, because weed eaters were not that common in 1950, so they're not pristine. There's a lot of weeds there. I'll plant them in that scenery. On this structure, because of the amount of electronics that I needed, I built the structure to set flat on against flush to the ground, or very nearly flush to the ground, just like on the prototype. There's a the dirt is basically pushed right up against whatever block foundation or pile foundation they had built around the structure. But I built a frame to set it in that leaves the center open, which lets me set and then the frame that positively positions that structure so that it doesn't knock. I've got little weeds and various things on this platform. I haven't completed its scenery as of yet, and we'll talk more about some of the scenery aspects of fine scale modeling future shows. But I built this small base, put a couple of the details that I'm starting to work on to complete this for inclusion on the scene of the layout. Scratch built a little coal shed, built this little cart, scratch built, well, it's built out of wood on top of a tissue kit. You buy like 6 of these little carts. I built while I was building this little cart, and it's metal frame cart. It's weathered with oils and powders. Scratch built the top out of individual planks. While I was at it, I built another one of those little carts. I built that off the photo. It was sitting there in the photo beside of it. I glued some detail parts and some chain that I used some etch it on and a little rust. And these little carts are make a great detail for the layout. And it's the details that bring a scene to life. A layout full of structures with some random trees and all grass looks like Central Park possibly, but the real world, humans are dirty creatures. There's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of clutter, there's a lot of dirt. You need that stuff. And it's so easy to include that in Sure if you build a little platform. I don't always, but often do build these little platforms to put in there. Oh, and David Stark in the chat mentioned, Barry, if the material's aluminum, brush it with white vinegar to etch the surface. I've also used white vinegar on steel, like steel wool, to make stains.
That's good to try. Thank you, sir.
It might blacken it some too, although normally it takes a while, so you may need a big jar and stick the material in there, cut them up and stick the material in there.
Yeah.
You have to etch it too, but for a very much shorter period of time. I use that material, that steel wool vinegar trick for a unusual effect. A lot of people mix it to stain wood with, and it's an ancient stain, hundreds if not thousands of years.
I remember Ron Perret doing a whole video on that.
That's right. I was fascinated with that after watching that video, and it's a great effect. And he talked about leaving it too long. You only get a week or 2 weeks effective use out of it as a wood stain for the types of colors that we would like me and you both like, and Miles like this grayish color. Yeah. Well, it's not that we like it; it's in the real world. This grayish color that doesn't last too long, but this rusty color that happens after weeks of it sitting there is an exceptional stain to use where steel's been laid and scrap heaps have been laid to stain gravel and balance the rust that seeps out of everything.
Yeah.
So what do you guys? What'd you guys do? Did you put a frame on your structure? Did you plan it in a scene in the future? What's your thinking on how?
What I'm going to do is lay a little scenery and glue, leave an area where the base of this will sit and glue it down in, because it has that concrete support. So I need to get scenery actually under the building. I just took this old apple barrel barn red and dry brushed it on here, and I got this effect. So that's not too bad. If I get the right colors, I might be able to do that. So maybe that's what I'll try, doing a little dry brushed acrylics on there. Because then I can always seal that with some dull coat too. Yeah, that didn't turn out too bad. Yeah, that way I can be a little more precise with my application with the dry brushing too. All right, there's a thought. I just got to get the right colors.
The trick's blended. The trick blending the colors together seems to be the ones that I like are all these. They're wild shades of colors. They're black and rust and clear metal.
Yeah.
But you want to plan to put it into your layout somehow instead of that. Most of us, you think of your instinct or my instinct was traditionally or to begin with, build these structures and set them on the layout, but it's more that they need to be planted in the layout. I like places for them. I don't for all the structures, but I can show you this one. I'm working on one right now that is it's a foam core base. It has a similar arrangement with the holes cut through it because this gets several structures on it. It by no means completely detailed, but build out the roads and where the structures go, leave the hole. I got grass mats sticking up at angles where I've got to cut it for flower beds, but I can build this small module, and I take the foam core and peel the paper off the surface, and then take that is the most common styrofoam tool, a Sureform tool.
Right.
And kind of divots out because no place. I mean, if you've mowed grass, if you've rode a ride lawnmower at 30 minutes till dark before and tried to mow in a hurry, you realize how bumpy your flat yard looks or feels.
Oh, yeah.
So, and you find that out when you're in a real big hurry and you get the grass mowed before it rains or something, but they're not smooth. So I give these little, divots and fillets and to this surface to give it some undulation, which the grass mats, depending on the ones you use, do great at representing if you push it into the foam real good. Spray it, push it down. But you, of course, if you put those in there and you stack them, you get that too.
Yeah, what thickness foam you use, Andy?
The foam core is 5/16. There's a couple different ones.
Oh, okay.
It's a 1/2 inch. I like the 1/2 inch material, and I don't have to put a substructure on it.
Yeah.
This one, I knew I was going to be removing for a few reasons. So I built it as a semi-removable base. So this leads to a concrete road on one side, and it gets the track roadbed profile on the other. So it's in a V, and it's in a perfect spot where it's really easy to hide the seams. Although I can put it on there, dust it with some ballast or some gravel, which I use grout for, tile grout. But you could dust it with that and you'd hide any seed. But it needed to be removable because it gets potentially a semaphore for the order board or things like that. And then you've got to be able to get at the electronics under some of these. If you made a pickaxe or an Arduino, or a Xeon supercomputer or something, you've got to get at that gut. Miles, what kind of plating did you do for planting yours on layout, or how would you go about taking yours? And like we talked about just a moment ago, the pet peeve that you shared with me, like most, that these 100,000+ ton structures can float. How do you solve that problem?
Well, I take a little wooden scenics, dirt, grass, whatever it takes, trash, anything, put it up against the building. If you look at the older DPM catalogs, I shot almost every photograph in the DPM catalogs, and every one of them, even the city scenes, have got dust and dirt blown back up against the building, and that's just simply the earth tone ground foams that I blew in there. But anything to hide that seam between the building and either the sidewalk or the ground itself, because like you say, buildings just don't float. But as far as planning that I've made for this particular building, I've made absolutely no plan whatsoever. I have no place to put it. I just built it for the show. So, I can't talk about where I'm going to put it. I should say you're using gator foam, I hope, rather than foam core, because the gator foam will not warp. I would stay away from foam core if at all possible, especially about water-based seamer materials.
Yeah, and also the edges, when you cut it, they're much more robust. They keep a sharp, crisp edge compared to foam board. You lift the building out a couple of times, you're going to ding up your corners and stuff. Yeah. Or, you lift it out and the bottom paper catches on something and tears or bends, That's why I'm gator board.
Yeah, the other thing with the gator board is you can get that up to almost 2 inches thick. I mean, it'll have just two surfaces, but you can get it an inch and a half, 2 inches of thickness, as well as 3/16 or half of the things that we normally see. So if you wanted to take your top layer off, Andy, and do a bunch of undulation on that, that's really an easy way to do it. And then you have that solid plastic impregnated surface on the bottom to keep it straight and flat.
Absolutely. The difference in foam core, the stuff I get is well, let's cover those materials. So gator foam is essentially styrene, right? It's a plastic on.
Well, it's basically impregnated with plastic, yes.
Yeah. Okay, and then there's foam core like you would find at Walmart, at the dollar store, or craft stores, fairly economical, and it's paper, just paper.
Yes, it has basically a thick paper on it, right?
Yep. Now this material is, and they call it foam core. Actually, they may call it something picture set, whatever. And this material is that I prefer to use, and what I've used for this is from Hobby Lobby, and it's closest to being a really thin laminate of wood. Oh, it's not wood. It's glue. It's sawdust glued together. Okay, so it's a real thin MDF for a material, or like a laminate. It may have some paper product in it. I'm not real sure, because it's quite thick. It's so thin it peels up somewhat like paper, but it's more brittle. So it's
something akin to gator foam then on the top and bottom.
Well, it's a fiber. Yep. It's a fibrous material. I don't think I have a sheet that is handy.
Yeah, not in use. Yeah, the other thing with gator foam is that the interior of it is a very high density foam compared to foam core. I have a little piece.
The cheap stuff, the stuff from Walmart or something, to make pretty good backs for structures that you can't see in a city or something.
Does it look like that?
Yes, that's what it looks like before you paint it. Absolutely.
They call this stuff laser board.
That's
a lot of the people with laser cutters are using this material because it's extremely thin, but it cuts extremely well on a laser cutter.
Yep, that stuff's awesome. But I put a coat of paint on it so that so that stuff doesn't soak into the fact that it's wood. That's why all of mine you see is a lot of mine's white, because I just put a coat of whatever white house paint I had on it. Just to keep glue. I don't use a lot of water materials, or a lot, I don't soak stuff in water too much, but I mean, this is done with grout, which dry adheres down. So it's got a little bit of 50-50 alcohol. It's, not dry or not wet very long, but so those
here is a half-inch gator foam.
Yeah, I haven't found a good source for gator foam. So, I mean, you can order it online, obviously. So there is a good source for it, but there's not a local place.
The better art stores will have it.
Yep. Well, I think that's about as much time as you guys got. Anything else to cover for this particular structure, or for anybody to grasp?
I don't think so. No.
I'm good. Tune in the 11th and watch us over at Joe Robertson's.
There you go.
Wouldn't miss it for the world. And then the end of next month, we'll have another show. We'll start a new structure, again, a larger structure from beginning to end. You'll get to see all three of us this next time model at a different scale. So for those HO modelers, those weird 1/64 fellas, and the good 1/4-inch scale guys too. So
yeah.
So we look forward to that.
1/64 word scale.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Look forward to that show. Thanks, guys, for working with us. And we all ended up with a real nice structure at the end of the build. Thanks for everybody who tuned in for it. I'd love to see pictures of anybody else who's starting their first wood kit posted to the community. Or if they try any of the techniques that all of us have tried and probably stolen from somebody else unabashedly. It's all, at this point, all hand-me-down technique and how we apply and mix and match these things together, but we all use different techniques to get it. What I'm happy with as a structure, I'm happy to add to my layout. So
it's all good.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, Johnny, for being here with us tonight.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. We just want to say go to YouTubeModelbuilders.com. There you can check the schedules for all our shows and the times for the shows. Tuesday and Wednesday are an hour earlier than the Thursday and Saturday live shows. Be sure and click on the e-magazine and sign up for that when it comes out, which is bi-monthly. We just had one come out coming up on 2 weeks now, so JD and his team do a great job on that, so be sure to sign up so you'll get a notification when it is out. And I want to say thank you for coming in tonight. These are recorded shows. You can go to our YouTube channel, YouTube Model Builders, and find the playlist for each one of the shows. So if you need to catch up or go back and watch a show, you can do that. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Hope you have a good month. We will see you in the month of April. So y'all have a good night.
All right.